It's time for an Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and this is a best of podcast in honor of Edith Renfrow Smith, who recently passed away. And she lived quite a life. She passed away at the age of 111. She's the first black person to graduate from Grinnell College. And in fact, if you drive around downtown Grinnell, you'll see murals of Edith Renfrow Smith. And we'll be talking with Monique Shore, who has written a book about Edith Renfrow Smith and her life called No One Is Better Than You. And we recorded this podcast last year with Monique, and she talks about Edith Renfrow Smith and I guess you could call it motivational life that she lived. I know a few people who have read that book and say that Edith Renfrow Smith, very inspirational. She lived much of her life in Chicago, but she became a teacher herself. And I think you'll find the interview very fascinating. So enjoy this best of and enjoy hearing about the great life of Edith Renfrow Smith, passing away. I think it was 2-3 weeks ago at the age of 111, an esteemed alumnus of Grinnell College. But first of all, a word from our sponsors and our presenting sponsor, Grinnell State Bank. I want to thank them for being so community involved. And if you check out their website, you can find out that if you're not a customer yet of Grinnell State Bank, you can get started opening your accounts in just 15 minutes. If you're not sure what you need, check out Simply Banking and open your accounts online or in person at any of their 4 locations, which, by the way, include not only Grinnell, but Johnston, Marengo, and Polk City. Now, if you need financial advisors, loan officers, and an insurance agency working under the same roof, check out Grinnell State Bank. You can get MasterCard, debit cards. They have no monthly fees, and they also have great services there at Grinnell State Bank. You can find out about their savings account with Simply Savings, no minimum average balance. You can upgrade to save on fees with preferred checking. You can waive monthly service fees. You can say goodbye for maintaining the average available collected balance. It's a great bank, a fantastic financial institution. Check them out, Grinnell State Bank in downtown Grinnell. And again, their other locations include Johnston, Marengo, and Polk City. Other sponsors include B. Nicole Salon in downtown Grinnell. I always get my haircuts there. Stop on in and say hi to Brandy and Company at B. Nicole Salon in downtown Grinnell. And of course, Saints Rest Coffee Bar in downtown Grinnell. It's a fantastic place to hang out. If you want to study there, they have great Wi-Fi. If you want to get some delicious monster cookies, they have those there at Saints Rest Coffee House in downtown Grinnell. It's time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and this time around we're going to be talking about Edith Renfrow Smith, and a lady who's done a lot of research and is personal friends with Edith Renfrow Smith is Monique Shore, who's actually written a book about her. And she sounds like a fascinating lady, and I don't want to jump on her toes by any means, because Monique can tell us everything probably there is to know about Edith. But the reason we're featuring her is because she is the first black woman to graduate from Grinnell College, and she's received so many honors, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But there's going to be a birthday card shower for her, and Monique, maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, so Edith will turn 111 on July 14th, and for several years now, we started this actually during the pandemic, and so the college has been organizing a card shower, and so she has gotten over 100 birthday cards every year since then. The goal is always to get her as many cards as she has years on this planet, and we've always exceeded it, so.
That's fantastic. Now, when do those cards need to be in, and where do people send them to?
You know, they will send them to the college alumni office. I do not have the details of what date they need to be there by.
Okay.
So we'll have to.
But get them in soon.
Yeah, get them in soon. So there's going to be a few people that will go to Chicago to visit her on her birthday. So they want them to get to the college's office probably about 5 days before that, so that they have time to gather them.
I'm sure you send them to the Grinnell College alumni office,
right.
And it will get to them.
Right.
In care of Edith Renfrow Smith.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah.
I read up on her, and thank you so much for doing the book on her. And tell us a little bit about your relationship with Edith Renfrow Smith and why she fascinates you so much.
So I worked at the public library here in Grinnell for over 33 years, and part of my job, I was in charge of all the technology stuff, and part of my job involved our digital archiving projects. And so I managed a project called the Poweshiek History Preservation Project, where we not only shared the historic photos that the library had in our collection, but we encouraged individuals to bring in photos of local history so that we could digitize them and capture what they showed, the metadata, right? The who, what, when, and where. And we realized in 2015, thanks to the research of a local gentleman named Dan Kaiser, who's done a lot of research on the history of Grinnell, he was researching the Renfrow family. He was researching African-American families of early Grinnell. And he realized that we had no pictures of this family. And Edith was obviously a very important historic person, having been the first graduate, the first Black African-American graduate of Grinnell College. And he came to me and he said, you know, Monique, you've got this great project. Is there any way that you think we could reach out to Mrs. Renfrow Smith and see if she might contribute some family photos so that we could have them here in our local archives? So through the alumni office, I connected with her. And a couple of weeks later, she, at age 101, walked into the public library with a shoebox full of photos. And we sat down and we scanned those photos, and she and her daughter chatted and told us who was who and all the stories. And then the next day, she did kind of a live oral history interview with Dan Kaiser there at the library that was, we packed the room, over 100 people attended in person. And she just charmed everybody's socks off and was such a delight. That was in October. That Christmas, I received a box of homemade fudge that she sent me as a thank you. And that was kind of the start of our relationship. She was 101, so I thought, right?
Yeah.
Well, working with Dan and supporting the archives, we just kind of dug into her story a little bit more and more and tried to document as much as we could. Shared the story through the library's social media. And then when she was 105, the college decided to give her an honorary degree. And so as an alumni of the college, I happened to be able to be in on making that call and sharing that news with her and then having dinner with her when she was back for that event. And so that was very exciting, wonderful. That was in 2019. And then the next year, of course, the pandemic struck. But a new professor had just arrived on campus that fall, Dr. Tamara Babouf, and Dr. B for short. And her expertise is on African-American women in academia. And she was fascinated by Miss Edith's story. And so as the world kind of started to open back up, she and one of her students decided to do some summer research and see what they could find out about Miss Edith's story. Because the college really had very little on her beyond kind of what was in the college paper and in the yearbooks. So they ended up coming to the public library and asking if we had anything, and here we had collected all these photos and we had collected several stories because we were, a lot of this worked closely with Dan on his research. And so I started working with Tamara and then with a couple years of the students doing research, really digging into this story. So for several years there, Tamara had the expertise to really recognize the treasure that her story was. And so she kind of took it and just ran with it. So in the process of helping with that, several meetings, lots of phone calls with Miss Edith, and then just learning more about her family's history in this area. When throughout this process, so many people had said, gosh, she's got a fascinating story. Somebody should write a book. Somebody should write a book. There'd been a couple people that we'd heard were working on things. But in 2020, the December of 2022, when the college announced they'd be naming Renfrow Hall in her honor, I just really felt a big nudge that I needed to try to make this book a reality. I was familiar with her story. I felt I understood her enough that I could tell it in a way that would honor her life and her priorities. I just need to figure out a way to get it illustrated. And so launched into that process, had amazing support from the community and from alumni to help through a GoFundMe account, a Kickstarter campaign actually. I was able to get funding to pay the illustrator and started the book in earnest in January and had the first copies in hand by December of 2023. So by January 2024, the year of her 110th birthday, we had this book in hand.
Her grandparents were slaves.
Yes. And in fact, what we have learned is that her grandfather, George Craig, came through Iowa as a freedom seeker on the Underground Railroad. He had escaped slavery in Missouri. And there's an 1895 article where he recounts his own story, and he tells of traveling with John Brown and stopping in Grinnell. So one of Grinnell's kind of the cornerstones of Grinnell's history is J.B. Grinnell, of course, was an abolitionist and was a strong supporter of the Underground Railroad. And the passage of John Brown through Grinnell in 1859 is pretty well documented, that John Brown knocked on J.B. Grinnell's door, and J.B. Grinnell put him up for the night along with his group of people. And the black men stayed in his barn, and they put the women up in the hotel. And here we have this story in George Lucas's own telling of it, saying that he was one of those men that was traveling with John Brown on that journey. So he didn't settle in Grinnell at that point, right? So he went on and went on to freedom, we believe, in Canada. We've picked up the story then again 5 years later when he married his wife, who was in a Quaker community in eastern Iowa. Okay. So it's possible that he met her. It was the next stop, where they stopped there a couple days after Grinnell. It's possible that he may have met her during that part of the journey. It was one of their longer stays. But what we know is that somehow he met her and came back to Iowa and married her. They spent most of their life, raised their 3 daughters mostly in Oskaloosa. But when the daughters were all grown, they all married men and settled in Grinnell. So.
And Edith came from a big family.
So yeah, she was one of 6 children. So she was the 5th of 6. So she was 6 years younger than the 4 older siblings. So she always, there was quite an age gap. So when she talks about growing up, her older siblings were all off working by the time they were, not very old. And so one of the challenges with telling the story in the book was the way we envision kind of a big family now, like the house is always full, everybody's kind of around. It's just like they weren't there. They were off working. Mm-hmm. Dad was always at work. They were hard working people in a time when every dollar was, it was more like every nickel, right, was important. And so, so she had 4 older siblings, and then she had a younger brother who was just over a year younger than her, and they were very, very close. She will tell you that she and Paul were just like twins. They did everything together, and so they were very close.
Education was very important to the parents of Edith and her siblings.
Yes, hugely important. Her mother was really the driving force. And so the book title is No One Is Better Than You, and that comes directly from her mother.
Oh, okay.
Because her mother would tell the children, no one is better than you. They may have more money, they may be more beautiful, but no one is any better than you. And she repeats that every time. Any of these interviews that we've done, every single interaction that I've seen with Miss Edith when she's been with others, she has in some way conveyed that message. It is truly like a guiding mantra of hers. And that came directly from her mother. So when they were told that they couldn't go into the Candyland store or couldn't go into the movie theater, she would tell them, you just don't let that bother you. You know, no one's better than you. So, but education was the thing that they knew no one could take from them. And so she, Eva Pearl was Miss Edith's mother's name, was Eva Pearl, and Eva Pearl had actually done some tutoring in her, and was a kind of a teacher at heart. So when she was raising her children, she insisted that all of them would complete their education, you know, through high school and would go to college. They couldn't miss school. So I remember fondly one of the stories Miss Edith telling about how, you know, if they woke up and they didn't, you know, they had a little belly ache, Mom said, you get to school. You don't miss school. You don't miss school. That's something that nobody can ever take from you. You don't miss school. So all 6 of them, now think of this is during the 1920s and 30s, a very poor family, a black family. All 6 of those children went to college.
Wow, that's amazing for back then.
All of them went to college and graduated from college.
Sure.
So Miss Edith was the only one who decided to stay in Grinnell. But she had met Grinnell College students when she was young. They, in the 1920s, Grinnell hosted some black men as students through the Rosenwald Scholar Program. Okay. And because they were like, essentially it was 1 black student per year. Okay. And so Eva Pearl decided that one thing that she could do to help those students was to invite them to dinner on Sunday nights. So Sunday nights they would come and they would gather at the Renfrow home and they would all eat together. And Miss Edith remembers those men being so fascinating. Right. She loved that. And then she was also involved in the Uncle Sam Club, which it was an organization kind of on the south side of town here for students, that it was run largely by college students. They did after school and weekend programs, and she has incredibly fond memories of the college students that worked there. So she from a very young age, she said, I want to go to Grinnell. I want to go to Grinnell College. I'm going to find a way to do it. Wow. And so when it came time, her mom said, well, you got to find a way to pay for it yourself. You can live at home if you want. And so she lived at home. She got 2 jobs. She had 2 campus jobs. She walked back and forth the mile because their house was down by the cemetery. Walked back and forth that mile to and from campus every day, and worked the 2 jobs to pay her tuition the whole 4 years. The whole 4 years she was the only black student on campus. Amazing. Yeah.
Well, she's going to be 111 years old. I have to ask this. Did she, Miss Edith, face any problems with racism?
Yeah. So she will say Grinnell was generally, her experience in Grinnell was largely good, but there were businesses that wouldn't serve them. And there were, you know, when she loved sports, she played on the sports teams. Of course, at that time, the women's teams were intramural sports. She was always the only black student on the teams. Her teammates were fine and very welcoming to her, but she'd often get pushback, you know. But part of what makes her kind of phenomenal, and I think one of the reasons she's lived as long as she does, is she doesn't let those things eat at her. She doesn't dismiss that they happen. She doesn't deny that they happen, but she doesn't dwell on it. She just, you know, I'm not going to give that any energy. That's kind of what her approach is. I'm not going to let that negativity eat at me. So yes, there was racism. It was not as blatant as it was in a lot of places. One of her sisters actually went to college at a school that was in the South, and even though it was a historically black college, the racism of the wider community was such that she didn't want to be there. So
she sounds like a fascinating lady, and as I've told you, I don't know if I'll ever have the chance to meet her, but I feel like she's kind of channeling through you today, so I'm learning so much about her. And what I've read about her is she has received many honors, and for a person who's going to be 111 years old, she still has a great memory. Tell us about some of the honors that she has received, and some of the kudos that people have thrown her way over the years.
Yeah, when she was 95, she was inducted into the Chicago Senior Citizen Hall of Fame. She had worked as a school teacher in Chicago until 1972, if I remember right, but had been volunteering already from that. And so she volunteered for over 40 years at the Chicago Institute of Art and Goodwill and various places. So Chicago Senior Citizen Hall of Fame for her volunteering. She's in a super ager study. So she essentially, they meet with her every couple of months and test her memory, which is phenomenal. She can still name the streets that she walked down going to and from school. So when we
I don't know if I can even do that.
I know I can't. When we talked to her about when she was going to be staying in town, when she came back for the honorary degree, she was going to stay at the Grinnell house. And she said, "Oh, you mean President Maine's house? Now that's on the corner of," I got to think about it, Park. And so she knows exactly all that. So yeah, her memory is quite phenomenal. So yeah, so the super ager study is quite an honor. She's been interviewed by NPR and, like one of the NBC news shows.
Well, she was on like the Today Show or something like that.
Yep. So, over the years, the Chicago Tribune has done a whole series of articles every year for her birthday since she was 107. There's a journalist there that has really taken up quite a relationship with her. And then, of course, here in town, it's sad that it took so long for the college to recognize her in the way that they have. But the college was a very different place in 1937.
I bet it was.
It was very hard pressed for funds, as most places were in the midst of the Depression. And she doesn't even she didn't realize she was the first Black woman to graduate from the college. It just wasn't in the consciousness. So there had been two other women who'd attended the college before, but they hadn't graduated. So it just kind of wasn't a big deal. So and then it wasn't until her 70th college reunion.
70th.
At her 70th college reunion, they named the Smith Gallery in her honor, which is a small student art gallery inside the Joe Rosenfeld Center. And so that was kind of the first college thing that they did. And then the students who run the Black Cultural Center on campus decided to name their library space in her honor. And then, of course, the honorary degree, and then the building is kind of the...
Just kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Has she ever said why she was so dead set on going to Grinnell College? Because when you were explaining it, it had to be Grinnell College, no place else. Not University of Iowa, not Iowa State, not Central College or any place like that. Grinnell College.
Yeah. Well, like I said, from a really young age, she was strongly influenced by college students who were a part of her life. And that just was something that she can be a little stubborn, and so when she made up her mind, that's what she was going to do. But she loves Grinnell. Even though she's lived in Chicago since 1937, she still will call Grinnell home. Grinnell has been my home, and that's very much, well, the fact that her husband and daughter never lived in Grinnell. They visited Grinnell regularly. Like, they would come back and visit pretty regularly. But their family burial plot is at Hazelwood Cemetery. So there is a deep, deep connection to this community. Her mother lived in town until around 1960, and in the house that Edith had grown up on over on First Avenue. And then Edith and her husband kept that property as rental property until 2008. So they came back every summer. Her best friends lived south of town, so she was a school teacher. They would come back in the summer and they'd hang out at Alma and Booker's house, and Henry would help Booker in the farm, and Edith and Alma would make soap and do canning, and in fact, there's a woman who lives down in Montezuma who still fondly remembers Miss Edith coming for the summers, because she lived across the street from Alma and Booker. So,
Well, so she lived in Chicago for much of her life.
Yep, yep.
And still there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what did she do for a living? What did she do in Chicago?
After she graduated from Grinnell, she started working at the YWCA.
Okay.
And then she worked as kind of an admin assistant at University of Chicago. The man that she worked for said, "You should be a teacher." And he encouraged her to go back to school. So she went back and got a master's degree in education. And she became a school teacher. So she was a 6th grade teacher for over, I think, 22 years.
I bet her students loved her.
And yes, I'm sure her students loved her. Yeah. And so, a teacher and, a master teacher is actually how, so she was like a teacher who mentored the other teachers by the time she retired. Yeah.
Monique, do you stay in touch with her on a regular basis?
Yeah, I called her this morning to tell you that. She's very, she's still very clear. She moves a little slower than she used to, but her mind is as sharp as can be. So,
wow.
Yeah.
111 years old, I'm sure a lot of her friends or relatives are gone. Does she ever have any sadness about that, or does she continue with her optimism that you said that she has always had? She's always had,
and she keeps making new friends.
Oh, sure.
So last year she mentioned that she's in a retirement community. And so she just decided she'd be the person that sends cards to everybody. So there's however many 100 people are in it's a high-rise building retirement community, but she's like the social person. So she'll do the cards for everybody. She'll still make treats. When we visited last summer, she had just made up a big batch of banana bread, all the little mini loaves, and then she'll wrap them up and she'll go distribute them to all of her neighbors. She'll make cookies. She makes homemade wine. I got a bottle of homemade wine. So she just stays really active and finds ways to reach out and connect to people. So she has a reason to get up and do stuff every day.
So, and again, you weren't sure when the deadline was to get the cards in for the card shower, but get them in soon so that they can be forwarded to Miss Edith. And again, if you send them to the Grinnell College Alumni Office, Grinnell, Iowa. What's the zip code here?
50112.
50112. I'm sure that they will be forwarded on to her, and she'll be very appreciative of that. And her love for Grinnell and Grinnell College, I'm sure, continues. You said you doubt that she will probably ever come back to Grinnell, though, unless it's for her final resting place.
Yeah, we were bound and determined to get her here last year for the building dedication.
Yes.
And so it was a private jet ride, and even that was a lot for her. So just because it's a lot of miles between here and there, and so, and she just gets tired pretty easily. But
I bet she was quite honored, though.
Oh my gosh, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yes, it was overwhelming. There was an amazing parade. The streets were lined with the school kids. We went by Davis School. Davis School has just been closed now. She attended it when it was a brand new building.
And aren't there like 1 or 2 murals with her picture on it in downtown Grinnell?
Yeah, so a part of the dedication was these wheat paste murals that are around town. So there's a beautiful one of the Renfrow sisters right across from Renfrow Hall. That's down on Broad Street on the side of the bank. Then on the Art Center, there's one of her graduation picture, and then one of her as like a little toddler, a little 2-year-old. And then there's several others actually that are related to her. So there's one of her aunt, Anna Craig, who was actually also a Grinnell businesswoman, and her son, William, they're over on 5th Avenue. I think those are the main ones that have her family in them.
The book is called No One Is Better Than You, Edith Renfrow Smith and the Power of a Mother's Words by the one and only Monique Shore, the author. How can people get a copy of the book, Monique?
So the best place to get a copy of this book is at the Pioneer Bookstore here in Grinnell. And I'll tell you why. You can order it from Amazon. It is available online. But those are kind of print on demand. And so the print quality of the paper and the image richness is going to be a lot better, because these are the first run prints that I paid a little extra for to have the quality be better. So you're gonna do better getting it from the Pioneer Bookstore, and they can mail them to you wherever. So.
All right. And her birthday is
July 14th.
July 14th. So get those birthday cards in for Edith Renfrow Smith to the Grinnell College alumni office. Get them in soon, so it will be one of the best birthdays ever for Edith Renfrow Smith.
Yes.
Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
My interview guest has been Monique Shore on Out and About with Jamie Groud. Until next time, grrr, out is out. See ya.